Hey, what's up? Thought I'd do a video comparing muscle cars to answer kind of maybe a question I had, or at least a complaint I've heard uh, after winning races, or just overhearing while somebody else wins a race. Oh, you only won because your car is better than mine, or because you spent more money on your car. And I thought I'd answer the question, at least in the muscle car segment of things, does money win races? And to do that, I've got a selection of cars here. First one I'm going to do is the Vigero. You can pay for it online, in-game, I mean, for 21 grand, but that's silly because you can just go steal one. They're everywhere. And the cost to put the tracker and loss prevention on it is about 4,600 bucks in game, which is dirt cheap. I mean, you rub two corner stores, you got enough for this thing, right? So, and I did it up 100%, so it'll be on equal footing that way. That cost a fair bit of money, probably 200 grand maybe. So, I mean, souping it up isn't really uh, cheap, but it's cheaper than other cars. And this isn't exactly middle of the road because it is 375,000, but we're going to try it out anyway because I really like it. And this is the most expensive muscle car. It's like 585,000 or 565,000. I can't remember exactly. It's stupid expensive, in excess of $500,000. I mean, it's a great car, and it looks really awesome, but it's stupid expensive. So we're going to find out if it's all that much faster than the old base Vigero here, or even the quote-unquote high-end middle of the road car. I guess we'll call that the bargain high-end muscle car, and see how those two compare, and more importantly, how they compare to the cheapest one you can get anywhere for free, basically, or for very cheap. So I'm going to do multiple laps on the same track for each car, and I'll get a few videos of it and talk a little bit about how they compare to drive, and and at the end we'll see which one comes out on top. Well, I guess we'll post race times at the end of each segment, but so this might get a little bit long because it's going to take a while to get a good average lap time on these cars. I won't subject you to the whole thing. I mean, I might do 6 or 7 or 10 or 20 laps on each track to get a consistent time. But well, you can tune in for the highlights and for what I got to say about it after this. So, all right, stay in your seats. We'll be right back. Alright, this track is motion sickness. I picked it because it's got a lot of twisty bits, a lot of hills and off-camber corners, and you have to do a lot of fast direction changes. So it'll test stability and whatnot. And it's got a good long straight stretch at the end. This is my Vigero, 100% max. It's a pretty small, light muscle car, so acceleration's actually really good on it. Top speed, not the greatest. Probably one of the worst in the game as far as muscle cars that you'd actually want to drive in a race anyway. But because it's nimble and small and handles really well and gets to its top speed fairly quick, you spend a lot more time at your top speed than you might in a faster, harder to drive or shittier handling car. This thing is prone to kicking its ass end out, especially when you've got it fully souped up. But it's really well balanced, so it's usually controllable. Once you get used to it, you can learn to anticipate it and make it work for you like that by power sliding the car around a corner that you might otherwise have to slow down a lot for. I'm not saying it's easy, it takes practice, but like I said, this car is super easy to find. Not very expensive to soup up, and even at a base level, if you're competing in races with a lot of players, you might not come in first. Might not come in first, but you'll place and you'll be able to keep up. The trick with this car is just to not crash. Brakes are decent. You can change direction pretty quick without destabilizing the car too much. which of course I did just there. It's kind of like a fighter plane. It's so short and has a fair bit of power, so you can get it to brake into a power slide fairly easy without using the emergency brake. I would suggest never using the emergency brake with this car. Regular brakes is enough, and for sharp corners like this, slow it down, throw it off balance, and she power slides. Anyway, we'll give you some cinematic views so you can watch that. Alright, so 1108.629 for 5 laps in the Vigero. There was one reset in there, which I do in the first lap so that I have a clean car for the cinematic section. My best lap was 207.292. So 207.292 for the Vigero. Let's see how the other ones do. Alright, this race, going with the custom Tampa. This thing's maxed out, so there you go. Let's see how she does against the maxed out Vigero. And in case anyone's wondering, I design these tracks and I'm racing them alone, but I don't get credited with a win against it doesn't count against that 187, 179. You have to actually win against other people online, and you have to come in first to get a win. Otherwise, it's considered a loss. So if you're wondering about that, if you're thinking why isn't it working when I try to do it by myself, that's why they made it so that you couldn't cheat and get a fake racer score or whatever. Anyway, blah blah, enough about me. This is about the car, and personally I really like the style of this car and I like driving it. It doesn't do anything dramatically, it just does everything you ask it to without too much trouble. It doesn't mean it's slow, it just kind of gets you where you're going quickly but without you realizing that you're going quick. Pretty nimble. The front end moves around pretty well without having to fucking wrestle it. It's not too likely to break into a spin unless you drive it over aggressively like I am. Sounds alright. Certainly not a hey look at me engine note, but you can tell there's an engine under there. Top speed is much better than the Vigero's. And because it's heavier, it seems to be a bit more planted on the ground. It's less likely to break traction. When you want it to, though, it breaks traction pretty nice. It drifts pretty good. Seems to have good balance. You can catch it when it throws a spin like that. Like all I did there was flutter the gas pedal a bit. I didn't actually hit the stick at all. Handles these bits no problem. Flat out, hard braking. And to go around that corner, I hard braked, and then I just was, pulsing the stick left and coming on and off the fuel. Didn't really use too much brakes after that. And when I let off the fuel enough for the rear end to kick out, I just gave it a bit of a butterfly, or I gave it a bit of a flutter, and she came back. So I mean, it's a very recoverable car. And because it's more stable and a little bit less nimble than the Vigero, sections like that I just went through are a little bit easier because it doesn't jump around so much. So if you're looking for a car that's more controllable, more linear and progressive in the way that it decides to break traction, then yeah, this one's worth, paying the more fake money for it, right? It's not so super fast that you're going to blow everyone away and think, haha, I bought a really expensive car, I'm going to blow you away now. It's just doesn't have any of the bad habits that the other muscle cars tend to have that might annoy you. So if you want a muscle car that's definitely drivable and seems like it handles like it should, like a race car a little bit, then this is good for you. And the Nightshade is the car you want if you want a car that handles a bit more like a sports car or supercar, very planted, very, kind of car you can brake late and accelerate in a corner, whereas a car like this, you kind of need to set up a little bit for it. Give the car time to do what you want it to. Anyway, enough babbling. I'm going to go into a little bit of cinematic here. You guys can look at the car and then move on to the next one. Alright, so we're about to get the time for the Tampa. I didn't do any resets, but I did spin out in the last lap, so it should kind of even out and give me a comparable time to the Vigero. 11, so it's about 8-9 seconds faster overall, even with the spin out, but like I said, that balances out with the respawn I did with the Vigero. Let's see what my best lap was. Sorry, you had to see that. And best lap was 2:06. So it seems like the best lap was only 1 second faster overall. So there's a car that's, literally 100 times the price. Is that math correct? Yeah, at least 10 times the price. 10 times the price? No, more than that. Yeah, it's almost 100 times the price of the Vigero, but it only saved me a second per lap. And sorry. And to be honest, the Vigero is a little bit funner to drive just because it's a little bit more wild. It's a little bit less settled down. Anyway, let's see what the next one has in store. All right, this time we are going with the sleek and sexy Nightshade. Probably the nicest looking muscle car. I don't know. I could do without the chrome light surrounds, but I don't know. It's one of the nicest looking muscle cars, and you can roll cage it, which always makes you feel a little bit more professional when you're racing. And the back tires are absolutely freaking massive, so it looks good with dished wheels. Anyway, let's see how she does. Shouldn't be raining when I get to the race. I want to do this on dry track for the sake of consistency. Yeah, but the roads are wet. That's so annoying. Alright, well, I guess it's a bit of a wet lap. We'll see how she compares. First off, this car is very flat cornering. It's very wide. It's very stable. It's not so big on changing directions quickly, in so much as it tends to understeer in sharp corners. Like that. Although in that corner it was decent because, it kept the ass end from flipping out. And I think that's part of the reason this car is so stable, is because it has such a tendency to understeer. However, the ass end seems to be a fair bit heavier than maybe you might think, so when the ass end does flip out, it can sometimes be violent, sudden, and, well, you'll find yourself pointing in the opposite direction before you know it, so be aware of that. This thing will take you right to the limit with the corners and then just dump you off the edge without really telling you about it. Not much of a drifter. It's a little too planted for that. By the time you've thrown it off balance enough to break it free for a drift, you've lost too much speed to make it worth your while. So, nice smooth flow through the corners. Brakes are a problem in this car. It does not have enough brakes for the speed it'll generate. I was trying to show you how you take that corner, a nice smooth arc, and don't worry about drifting it. We'll try again maybe in the next corner before I switch over to a cinematic view. Top speed in this car is excellent. It doesn't get to it as fast as maybe you might like, but it's good. Clung pretty good there. Not much of a slide, as you can see. The other two cars slid pretty good through there with the momentum. This one I had to slow it down to the point where I couldn't risk massive understeer, and I didn't want to spin out. So you got to mind yourself a little bit in the corners with this thing. This thing loves open roads and long curves. If you're going to take this thing on an inner city course with lots of skinny 2-lane streets and 90-degree corners, pick a different car. Money will not win you that race. Oh, there, see how much I had to slow down that much for that corner. We'll try drifting it maybe when I get into cinematic view, but I wouldn't expect better results. All right, let's see how she did. 1123. Now I had a lot of spinouts, a lot more spinouts than I did in the other two cars, even though this car has much more traction. The problem was, if you're expecting it to handle like a muscle car, it has too much traction, maybe. I found if you brake late, stay on the brakes, and then make the corner, it does okay. Again, as long as it's not too sharp. So this car is great for long sweep.